Yes, actually, as a matter of fact, some people are more American than others. I'm being told that this idea of a heritage American is somehow DEI or it's not real. That's foolishness. We'll be talking about that today. Speaking of foolishness, we will also be talking about looks maxing. There's a guy who's going after JD Vance. Apparently, JD is not good looking enough, I suppose, to be president. I don't know, kind of gay if you ask me. Anyway, speaking of gay things, Netflix has gone all in. They've had crazy backlash for devoting a weird percentage of one of the recent episodes of Stranger Things to a big unnecessary coming out story. And how could we not talk about the Somali daycare fraud? You know the old song, I Should Have Been a Cowboy? Well, not anymore. I should have been a Somalian running a fake daycare. I could have made millions of dollars for doing absolutely nothing. This is the last show of the year. Actually, if you're listening to this on radio, or I don't know when you listen to it, you could be listening to the podcast. It will be the new year. I can't believe that just like that already. I mean, it doesn't even seem possible. You're telling me we're going into 2026? I don't know. 2025 was a crazy ride. And I appreciate all of you who have been here through it all with me. I mean, we saw some highs, we saw some very serious lows. I know God will use all of it for good, and I'm praying that 2026, crazy as that is to say, will be a very, very blessed year for you and for your family. And we have some really exciting plans here on the show and with some other stuff I'm working on for the new year. Real quick, if you can hear it, I can hear it. It drives me crazy. I am combating a cold, but I had to get this one in. I had to get in my final licks for 2025. And so if I sound a little stuffy, it's because I am. My voice is barely with us today. And the other disclaimer, if it sounds at any point during this show, if it sounds like I am in, I don't know, Mogadishu or Chicago or something like that, don't worry, I'm not being shot at probably. It's just, it's New Year's Eve. And so there are some people popping off fireworks, and I don't know how much of that'll come through. Anyways, let's jump in with kind of the flagship discussion for the day. And I want to start off, I guess, by reading a quote, a tweet that was put out by a guy named Brad Palumbo. Brad Palumbo is no friend of mine. I haven't ever, to my knowledge, really gone after the guy. He has terrible takes, so I have from time to time, I'm about to read you one such example, very bad takes, but, I don't think I've ever made a video about him or directly addressed him on the show, although that's possible. I think he considers himself to be something of like a libertarian. He tries to take that almost like a third rail position of, I'm going to attack the right and the left. I'm just a real straight shooter. And, I just don't care for that stuff, but anyway, he posted this and he said, quote, heritage Americans, air quotes and everything. Heritage Americans is DEI for mediocre white people, by the way. It's fine to have positive feelings about your ancestry, but you as an individual do not deserve credit or blame for the actions of others that share some part of your DNA. You are not, now this is where he gets really wrong, you are not more American than another American. You're either an American or you are not. There's no morally coherent or practical way to have some kind of a scale or second tier of Americans. Now, that's obviously wrong. If you took any time, for one, to read the Constitution, for two, to, pay attention in civics class, you would know that this is absolutely not true. To prove it, find somebody who is a first-generation immigrant to the United States and tell them they should run for president. They cannot. We've talked about it here on the show before, there is a two-tiered system. Some people are, yes, more American than other people. That's the system that was established by our founding fathers. If you come here and you become an American citizen, okay, that's cool, good for you, I'm happy for you, but you're not as much of an American as the guy who has literally, his bloodline has been here since the Mayflower. If you have somebody, and listen, I say this as a guy who half of my Nieves, the last name, it's not exactly a Mayflower name. I don't think anybody in my lineage that way was on the Mayflower. The other section is like Irish and Scottish, and they've been here for a long time. But either way, I have not been here, to my knowledge, since the Mayflower. I'm just, common sense enough to understand that if you can literally trace your bloodline all the way back through World War I and II and Korea and Vietnam and going all the way back even like to the Civil War, going back even before that, you go all the way to the Mayflower, yes, you are absolutely more American than somebody who just got naturalized yesterday. And that's not like a bad thing. It doesn't mean that the person who just got naturalized is like lesser of a human being. It doesn't mean that they don't have the same rights, like human rights, as anybody else. That, before I got to preempt some of the liberal talking point responses. What do you mean? Are you saying that they're not even human? No, that's not what anybody's saying. But the idea that it's like DEI or something to acknowledge that some people have heritage in this country. Let's read a little bit from the Constitution. The preamble of the Constitution, it says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty, to ourselves and our posterity do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." The entire reason, they lay it out right there in the black and white in the preamble of the Constitution, the entire reason that we even created this government was to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves. These are the people who are doing it day one, the people who actually made the Constitution, but then for our posterity. What is their posterity? It's their children. It's their bloodline. It's the people who would come from them, not for the rest of the world. The Constitution greatly benefited the rest of the world. Yes, absolutely. But it was not written for the rest of the world. It was written for Americans and their posterity, for their children, their grandchildren, and so on. To say that those people have no more claim to be an American is literally ignorant of what the Constitution says, what our history is. And I understand maybe you're trying to have this like very liberal perspective of, oh, we're all the same. And like, listen, I'm not saying that I even disagree with the original part of Brad's post where he talks about, well, I do disagree for the idea that it's DEI for white people. Nobody is saying that because you're a heritage American, you should get like a special job offer. I don't know why he's trying to compare this to DEI. Like, are you going to get into medical school? Well, I know that your scores were bad, but seeing as you've been here a long time, we're going to let you in even though you're not qualified, because that would be more parallel to DEI. Nobody, certainly not myself, nobody is saying that that's how we should be handling this. All we're saying is that maybe, just maybe, if you just got here yesterday and you were naturalized and all of a sudden you think that you're going to tell the rest of us what... I mean, this is what we see happen constantly. We're being lectured by foreigners about our country. We're being lectured by foreigners about our history. We're being lectured by foreigners about how we should run our government. And respectfully, you just got here. I didn't really ask for your opinion. If my family has been here for 250 years and you've been here for 250 minutes, yeah, I'm sorry, but I think maybe you should read the room and understand, okay, it's like if I just came to a new business that was a family-owned operational business for 250 years, and I'm the new guy, I just show up and I'm like, hey, I think that we should fundamentally change the way that we've been doing business for the last 250 years. They would probably smack me across the face and kick me out of the board meeting. I'm not saying that that's what we ought to be doing to some of these people, but I'm very sick and tired of being lectured by foreigners and having them explain my country to me and the history of this country and what it really means to be an American. Brother, you just got here. It's cool. I'm happy for you that you're enjoying this country. And listen, and not to be too harsh on some of the people who are immigrants. I have personal friends who have immigrated to the United States who are like the most red-blooded patriots. I would trade them in a heartbeat, right? I would say, okay, get rid of the liberals. I'll take those guys. I want some more of those guys. I want some of these people who have, come from the former Soviet bloc, who have seen communism. I want people who have escaped totalitarian regimes, and they're just like the most diehard Americans you've ever seen in your life. I love those guys. And if that's what we could take, they are a net benefit to the United States. But a lot of people who come here simply are not. I love those guys. I would take them in a heartbeat. What I'm not super stoked about is, as we'll get to a little bit later in the program, having people come from, I don't know, maybe Somalia, and then try and tell us how we should run our country. Ilhan Omar is a great example of this. She goes to Somalia and tells them all about how she wants to use her position in Congress to help Somalia. Get the heck out of my country. Why are you here? I mean, you probably married your brother, allegedly. I don't know. I can't say for a fact, but I mean, it looks like you probably married your brother. Why are you here? And I'm so tired of seeing these people try and win. Like, in my opinion, Brad Palumbo, garbage take after garbage take, fundamentally misunderstanding the Constitution. It was made for them and their posterity. We know that there is a two-tier system of who's an American and who's like a little bit less of an American. Run for president. It's black and white. It's right there in the Constitution. I didn't set the standard. Now, I agree with the standard, but I didn't set that standard. It's in the Constitution, which if you had bothered to familiarize yourself with, you wouldn't come up with these ridiculous garbage takes. I'm just so sick of this being told that, it doesn't matter at all if you've been here since the Mayflower. Yes, it does. You should be proud of it. That's an amazing thing. That is the blood of a nation. Moving on now. Have you heard about this guy called Clavicular? He's a young guy. I think he's in his like really early 20s, and a pretty handsome looking guy. He's really, I guess, renowned for what's called looks maxing, which is this idea that you would go to extreme lengths to look as good as humanly possible. He's got like this mathematical formula, and there's certain things about like the symmetrical whatever nature of your face, and there's certain the cheekbones and the collar and whatever. There's what he would consider to be objective standards for beauty. Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. That much is certainly true. But there's also, there is a standard. I won't disagree with him entirely on that. But you might think, oh, well, what's wrong with that? Listen, I've spoken about being presentable. I think that there's definitely something to be said for the fact that our society, our culture has just accepted pajama pants at the airport. You go into a Walmart and it looks like there's a bunch of, I don't know, insane people who live in hoarder houses and style their hair with chicken fat and roll around. They haven't taken a shower in like 6 weeks. Okay, there's definitely a lot of problem in that regard. Excuse me, as my voice almost goes out on me today. But there's a lot of an issue in our society where you have these people that are just lazy slobs. I suppose looks maxing is kind of the exact opposite of that, but it's the opposite in the sense that much like the fat slobs, it becomes horribly unhealthy. So, I make this analogy all the time. You have a road, and on either side is a ditch, and it's really easy to get in the ditch in either direction. The road is what's safe. The road is what's healthy. On one side, you have the disgusting, disheveled slobs who style their hair with chicken fat. And on the other, you have this looks maxing thing. And if you're wondering, like, okay, what's the big deal about this? For one, it's vanity. Like, it is definitionally vanity. These people are changing their faces. They're going so far as to get surgery to change the way that their structure of their jaw looks, so that when they like make a little face, they have more of the more of the jaw things. So they can have a real sharp, I don't know. They do that. They get like leg extension surgeries. I don't know if you've heard about this. They'll cut your legs up. They give you these weird brace things so that you can grow a couple of inches, so that you're, I guess, more attractive in that regard. Hey, maybe I'll sign up for that. I wouldn't mind being about 3 inches taller. No, I'm kidding. I would never do that. That's bizarre. This is really weird stuff that they're doing. But the guy who's leading it, again, his name is Clavicular. At least that's what he goes by. I don't know what his actual name is. But he's a streamer. He does, kind of that slop content where you just record yourself, I don't know, going to the grocery store. And people watch it for some reason. But his whole shtick is, he talks about this looks maxing. He did an interview with Michael Knowles, who I love Michael Knowles. And to any normal person, you'll understand, like, this guy's insane. But to the internet, a bunch of people are following him. He just hit a guy with his car, by the way. I think it's probably self-defense according to Florida law. He had some stalker, like, jump up on the roof of his car. So he just ran a guy over with his car. And so that got him a lot of, attention in the internet world. And then immediately thereafter, he's seen on Michael Knowles. And he's talking about how Gavin Newsom is the guy that he would prefer to be president. They're talking about who's going to be the next president. Is it going to be JD Vance, or is it going to be Gavin Newsom? And in one of the gayest, and I mean that literally gay, like homosexual, and one of the most homosexual political takes I have ever seen in my entire life, this young man says that he would vote for Gavin Newsom because he finds Gavin Newsom attractive, and he does not find JD Vance attractive. Now, I know that there are women who have been guilty of doing such a thing. There are women throughout history. I mean, you look at like JFK, handsome guy. Women flocked to him. If you have a really good-looking, presidential candidate, it's stupid. It's vanity. But there will be some men, apparently. I don't know if they're gay men or not. I'm not sure where this guy stands in that regard. But there's always been some women who will vote for him. What a effeminate thing to do, though. Young man, I mean, you're focused purely on your vanity, and now you're saying, well, I'm not going to vote for JD Vance because he doesn't give me the tinglies in my tummy like Gavin Newsom. I really prefer Gavin Newsom because I think he's such a good looking, such a dapper fella. I think I'm gonna give preference of my vote to that dude because I'm more attracted to him than the. No, I think that we've lost the plot. If that's the way that you are making your political decisions, you are a moron. Actually, it's literally gay. I mean, I don't know how else to describe this. It is literally, like, definitionally, it's a gay thing to want to do. But they're saying JD Vance is not good looking enough. And the internet, this kind of highlights. I posted something about this on YouTube, a video. I encourage you to listen to that if you have not. But there is an issue on the right wing. And this guy, Clavicular, he's not overtly a political guy, to my understanding, but he's definitely adjacent to right-wing groups. There's an issue within the right wing where there's young guys saying they're going to vote literally for Gavin Newsom because in their opinion, JD Vance is not based enough. There's this pursuit of taking these just stupid positions, these stupid, idiotic stances to say, well, I'm the most based guy in the entire room. And they're upset that, for example, JD Vance has an Indian wife. And by the way, just in total transparency, the fact that his wife is Hindu and he has a family, that's a very concerning familial structure. So JD Vance is a Christian, he's a Catholic, and he has children. And his wife, Usha, who seems to be a fantastic lady. I mean, you look at the way that Usha looks at JD, that's how every man wants their wife to look at them. She just beams with pride. It's actually a really wholesome thing to see. But Usha she's not a Christian. And so that's a concern, obviously, for her eternal soul. It's a concern for her salvation, But JD Vance as the spiritual head of the household, that is, and it's, in some ways, it's like it's kind of not his fault, but he did marry her. He can't control everything that she ever does. So if she wanted to be a Hindu, it's not like he can make her not be a Hindu, but he did marry her. And so that was something of a lapse of judgment. In my opinion, you don't have to agree with that. But as a Christian, I think that it is important to see, what somebody's household is like. And the fact that Usha is not a Christian is definitely, that is deeply concerning. That's in fact, probably my primary, I don't have much to complain about JD. So I don't say that to say that it's like the biggest deal in the entire world, but that's probably my primary concern with JD Vance as it stands right now is the fact that his wife is not a Christian. And so he has a split household. And so, she's obviously Indian and she's Hindu. There are people who say that they're not going to vote for JD Vance. In fact, they will vote for Gavin Newsom because JD is apparently a quote unquote race traitor because his wife is Indian. And, the Christian part, I do actually, I take issue with that. I'm concerned about it. But I don't think it's disqualifying inherently. That's if I'm looking for an issue with JD, that would be it. But they're saying he's a race traitor because he's in an interracial marriage. And this is what I'm talking about when it comes to this idea that you just need to be the most based guy in the room. You have to have the most ridiculous take. You have to, if everybody else is I don't know, if everybody else is scoring an 8 out of 10 on their political compass, you have to be a 12 out of 10. You have to go a step further. It can't just be that it's like they're literally becoming racist. And I understand why. I fully understand, not to say that I agree with it, but I fully understand why this would happen. It was incredibly predictable, actually. Some of these people have lost their minds. They've gone beyond what is moral, and they're trying to be so edgy and cool and win these internet points for being the most basic guy in the world at the cost of their soul. Now, speaking of things that are literally gay, let's talk about Netflix. So I don't know if you've been watching it. Stranger Things, I think they're on season 5 now. the most recent episodes have been rolling out, and so people are watching them. Personally, I think I watched the first 2 seasons of Stranger Things. Then I made the decision that it was a little bit demonic, and I stand by that decision. I think it was a very demonic show, even more so now. But they have been catching a lot of heat, and if you're a fan of the show, you probably already know why. Not to give any spoilers, I think that by the time you hear this, it will have saturated the internet long enough that I don't think I'm the one spoiling this story for you. But one of the main characters, Will, randomly and for no discernible reason, at least for me as a guy who watched the first 2 seasons of the show, has been declared gay. And so this is one of those things, it's one of those scenes, right? The world is ending, the sky is falling, and then all of the good guys, they get together to have their last little powwow, I guess, before they ride off into battle to go, I don't know, defeat the Demogorgons or whatever they call it in that show now. And they spend all this time to have this, I don't know, I think their real screen time was 4 or 5 minutes. But everybody says it felt like it was an hour. They get this guy. He's, actually, guys, before we go to war, I just need to let everyone know that I'm gay. And then they have this stupid, PC forced, hug it out moment. Everybody's like, well, you're never going to lose me. Even if you're gay, I'm not going to be whatever about it. They all give him a big hug. They all gather around, guys. We got to give him a gay hug. And, it's just so forced. It's just so ridiculous. By the way, the setting of this show is in the early 1980s. If he would have come out, let's just be honest here, let's be realistic. If he would have been telling everyone that he was gay, they would have flamed him and then probably ran away and been like, I don't want to die of AIDS. I mean, that was kind of a tough time period whenever it pertained to being gay. Always tough to be gay, but AIDS was a pretty big deal back then, and people didn't really take so kindly to it. So they also do this thing where it's retconning reality. They go back and they're like, actually, back in the 1980s, the good guys were still pro-gay. That's what they do. They have this, everybody understands when we think about history that people were not pro-gay in the past. This is a very recent development. I mean, you talk 2015 and forward, where all of a sudden, all of the good guys are the gay supporters, gay adjacent, LGBTQ affirming, whatever you want to call it. And, there's the commonly understood reality that before that, people understood that was a sin. They understood that it was bad, that it was wrong, it wasn't celebrated in society. But then they'll retcon it, right? So they'll go and they'll try and say, actually in the 1980s, because there were gay people in the 1980s, like I said, they were dying of AIDS. Really a terrible thing. They'll say, well, the good guys would have actually been pro-gay. All of these protagonists that are in the story, they would have loved gay people. They would have, never missed a chance to give somebody a big bear hug and congratulations that you apparently like boys. The funny thing that Netflix did, however, was at the beginning of season 5, again, another spoiler, there's a new I don't know, I wasn't familiar with this character because I stopped watching the demonic show a while back, but they introduced this character named Vecna or something like that, who, this was the first scandal of season 5 of the show. They depicted something which many people interpreted to be very sexual in nature, where Will, the young man who had eventually come out as apparently gay, had been held down, and this big tentacle thing went in his mouth and into his stomach, and it injected him with pumped him full of some kind of a thing. It was really weird. I saw the clips of it going around on social media. I understand why people saw that and had a little bit of an alarm bell go off and thought, that's kind of weird. This is supposed to be a child, and that's an odd thing. I can understand why somebody would take issue with that. And so, Netflix, without realizing it, a bunch of people are pointing this out. I shared a thing on my socials about it. You have this character who's not gay, and then he gets, abused. This is a very terrible thing. He has this horrible traumatic experience, arguably a sexually traumatic experience. And then in the same season, all of a sudden he becomes gay. What did they mean by that? What did Netflix mean whenever they wrote this? Was it some sort of an accidental, a subconscious Freudian slip or something like that? Because this is a truth bomb that people get really mad when you share. And I don't share this with any kind of ill will or anything like that. But it's the truth of the matter is, and this is, I can say just anecdotally, but the truth of the matter is, and there used to be some science on this, the peer-reviewed articles on it got removed, but a lot of the people who are in the gay, the LGBTQ, whatever community the vast majority that I know at least, faced very traumatic childhood experiences, oftentimes sexually, traumatic experiences. There's a very good case, in my opinion. Now, this is a hot take, I understand, but there's a very good case, in my opinion, to say that homosexuality is a maladaptive coping mechanism, which has turned into a very deviant fetish, essentially. There is no such thing as a gay gene, like that doesn't exist. If it does, we haven't found it yet. There's nothing biologically that should make somebody gay. But really quick, from an evolutionary perspective, like I don't believe in macro evolution, but if you're somebody who attributes, all of life on Earth to mutations and things like that, furthering a species, homosexuality would be like the worst mutation ever. I never hear the evolution crowd talk about this, or the Darwinian folks, but if somebody was to evolve, like they had some sort of a random mutation that made them only attracted to their same gender, their same sex, and now they can no longer reproduce or procreate, which is like from an evolutionary perspective, that is the number one reason you're even on the face of the earth, is to procreate and continue your bloodline and your species. That's the death of a bloodline. Ends with you. That's you're not reproducing. And so that would be like the worst maladaptive behavior possible. That's like the worst mutation that you could possibly come up with, would be a gay gene. Now, we don't know of a gay gene. Like I said, it doesn't exist. Or if it does, we haven't found it yet. It seems very likely to me that it is, in fact, a maladaptive coping mechanism that turns into what is essentially like a sexual fetish. The good news is for anybody who's dealing with that, and I've heard people say that they're born that way. I don't believe that to be true. I don't know. I'm not gay, so I can't really speak on that with a great deal of authority. From a Christian perspective, is it possible that we all are prone to certain sin? Like, I'm prone to certain sin that you're probably not prone to. I naturally struggle with certain things that you're probably not going to. I got to stay away from certain stuff. For you, it might be totally different things. Like, I have no problem at all with alcohol. I don't drink any alcohol, so I'm not like a drunkard. That's not a sin that I really have to pay a lot of attention to, or that I have to really, protect myself, guard my heart from. Whereas for you, it may be alcohol. Alcohol might be something that's very, very tempting for you, and it's just not for me. So I do believe that some people are born, we're all born different, right? We're different human beings, obviously, and so there's some people who might have a natural proclivity for some genetic reason to be predisposed to alcoholism or something like that. It's possible that there is something like that whenever it comes to homosexuality. I don't know. But I do not believe it's some immutable characteristic. I've seen tons of testimony from people who say that they were homosexual, they accepted Christ, and now obviously they're no longer gay. So I don't know how we got off on that big tangent, although it's an important conversation, I suppose. Netflix is getting berated for this episode. I mean, they're getting absolutely trashed. Everybody's sick and tired of it. They're sick and tired of being beat over the head with gay propaganda. This whole lie of we just want to get married, we just want to be able to get the tax filing, right? We just want to be able to file our taxes together and have some of the the legal benefits of being a married couple. That's all we want. It was always a lie. It was always a lie. Sin begets more sin. And I know that as a culture, we've tried to get away from a Christian foundation. We've tried to pretend that, there's nothing morally wrong with homosexuality. There's nothing, it's all, you have your truth and I have my truth. It's subjective reality, subjective morality. That's not true. That's not reality. That's not the truth. The truth of the matter is there is objective right and wrong that's set and ordained by God Almighty himself, not me, not you. These aren't like this. I don't just wake up one day and go, you know what? I think this thing is wrong. Like, no, I defer to the Bible. And the Bible is very, very clear about this topic among many. When you allow this stuff, sin begets sin. And so when we allowed gay marriage, which was a catastrophic mistake, for being honest, when we allowed gay marriage, we opened the door where you fast forward 10 years, you got the transgender stuff, kids getting mutilated. You got men, adopting two men, adopting or purchasing is what I would say in that case. Children, you have all sorts of stuff that's this debaucherous, evil, wicked stuff. And by the way, all throughout human history, we can see this trend where, the great empires and nations that have fallen, often before they fall, from their boundaries kind of a thing, before the nation crumbles to the rest of the world, the nation crumbles from within. It ends up, accepting this debaucherous, sexually deviant kind of stuff, and it doesn't work out well. It's kind of a tale as old as time. But people are so tired. They sit down, it's a long day at work, you get the remote, boop, you turn on the TV, and then bang, you get a baseball bat over the head. What the heck was that? Why did they make... It's every show. It's everything. Now, I think that it is becoming a little bit less and less, which is good, because we're seeing this, societal, cultural pushback, in real time. But for a long time, and it still remains true, for a long time, and to this day, when you want to sit down after a long day at work and just be entertained, you have to watch two dudes kiss. If you want to watch a show on Netflix, you have to be lectured about homosexuality, transgenderism, how horrible it is to be a white person, all of this stuff. People are just rejecting it. They're saying, you know what, actually, I don't think every single show I need to be bombarded with this. And the worst part, okay, maybe not the worst part. One of the worst parts of this entire equation is that it's always so sloppy. Like, it's never even done well. They don't introduce these characters in a way that's compelling. My wife and I, we've been joking about this lately. She calls me a critic when it comes to like movies and TV shows. I guess without knowing it, my standards have gotten higher for television and entertainment. But it's like one of the great rules of TV and movies is show me, don't tell me. Oftentimes like a crappy show, for example, you'll be watching and the person, they need to establish to the viewer that these two characters have a long relationship, that they know each other really well. Maybe they go back years and years or something like that. On a crappy show with a bad director or a low budget, they'll just go, remember that time 32 years ago where we did such, and they clearly date it, like they can't help themselves. They just have to, they put it in the script. It sticks out like a sore thumb. It didn't belong. It's poor storytelling. They're just like, hey, remember the fact that we've been best friends for 25 years? And they just like have to hit you with it. They should just implement somehow into the story something that the listener figures out, oh, they've known each other for a really long time. Show me, don't tell me. And so I say that, we'll be watching a show, I'm like, they violated the golden rule. I don't even know if that's the golden rule of film or anything, but to me it is. It's like that. It's like they violate one of the golden rules, except it doesn't even make sense. Like it's beyond just sloppy storytelling. It's beyond just bad entertainment. It's like, hey, this has nothing to do with the show whatsoever, and oftentimes completely ruins a perfectly good character that we spent 4 or 5 seasons developing. Bang, here's a baseball bat to the side of the head. Actually, that dude's gay. Maybe we just turn these shows off. Why even bother watching? Just turn it off. Well, my friend, we are now in the 4th and final segment of today's show. It is the, like I said, the last one of the year. I realized I did a great disservice to you. I didn't start today's show. I mean, how could I? I almost ended the year on the worst note possible because I forgot to do what we always do at the top of the show, which is start the best way I possibly could. So I guess instead of starting this episode, we will end it the best way that I possibly could. We still have more to talk about, but, go into the last segment the best way. And that's by, very quickly sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. This has been, in some ways, a very tough year. We had the very public and brutal murdering, assassination of our dear friend Charlie Kirk. We had all sorts of loss. We had, the butchering of Irina Zarutska. We had the National Guardsmen that were shot, and just. We've had some really awful stuff. We've also had some great blessings. I mean, we've had some fantastic wins. We defunded Planned Parenthood, for example. We did. I mean, it's like if you made the list of them, it would almost be hard to keep up with it all. And, through it all, the good, the bad, the ugly, the stressful, the not stressful, the thing that I hope that you take to heart is that Christ is your firm foundation. By the way, not your spouse, not your kids, not your pastor, not politics, not any of these other things. They will inevitably fail. They could all be great. Like your wife is probably great. Your husband is probably great. Not as great as God, though. He or she cannot fill those shoes. They're just not going to be able to do it. And so the only firm foundation, the only rock, the only actual thing you can always count on, you can always rely on, is God. If you have not accepted Jesus Christ into your heart as your personal Lord and Savior, I hope and I pray that you will do so. Enter the new year in the best way that you possibly could. The heck with New Year's resolutions. Throw that garbage out the window. Accept Christ. That's how you should go into the new year. And, I love to see, sometimes I have people, reach out about that. And, my DMs are always open whenever it comes to that. And I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. If you reach out with a theological question. I'm not a theologian, but we can try and figure out answers to the tricky stuff. We can try and work on that together. Now, I want to talk about the Somali fraud. I would be remiss if I didn't address the Somali fraud. By the way, to anybody who's watching the YouTube of today, you'll know this is true. I've been a mess, man. I'm over here like, I said at the beginning of the show, I'm struggling because my voice. I woke up 2 days ago. Literally, I could not speak. I mean, if I tried my hardest, words would not come out of my mouth. I was totally mute, and I thought, dang, the libs finally got me. They figured out a way to finally shut me up. They didn't even have to kill me. They just made me go mute. But no, I was dealing with a cold and just totally nuked my voice. So I'm like barely, I'm like screaming right now. If you watch the stream, my neck is probably bulging. My face is probably red. In between segments, I'm sitting here. I'm like drinking my water. I'm choking to death. I'm barely hanging in. So hopefully you are appreciative of today's show. But let's jump into the Somali situation. I'm not going to give you all the details on it. You probably already know Nick Shirley is doing a fantastic job. I've got two other friends, Cam Higby, who's a friend of the show. He's been on before. He's doing fantastic work. He's also exposing a lot of these Somali daycares. I don't know what the heck it is. It's obviously there's an error in the law. There's an error at minimum in oversight when it comes to daycares. Apparently, we just hand out taxpayer money to daycares, asking virtually no questions. Like, hey, are there even any kids that go here? Or, hey, do you even open your doors as a daycare? Can somebody can somebody enroll their kids in this daycare? We don't even ask those questions. It doesn't happen. Cam is doing great work with that. Nick Shirley's doing great work with that. I want to talk a little bit instead about the angle that my other friend, David Cate, is taking, because he is going around in Georgia, Fulton County, Georgia, and he's exposing these residences where, one of them, he posted a video about this. I shared it on my X account, which if you don't follow me on social media, you radio listeners, go and follow me right now. Drop what you're doing, unless it's your steering wheel. Don't drop the steering wheel. But when you park, follow on social media. You'll see this video I'm talking about over on X, where David went and he found this dilapidated house. I mean, it's closed. Clear. There's a sticker on the front door. It's probably, some sort of a safety hazard. You're not even allowed in there. And he pulled up the voter registration information. 12 people. There were 12 people who are registered to vote at that address in Fulton County, Georgia. If you're not familiar, Fulton County is home to Atlanta, Georgia. Fulton County is where all of the shenanigans happen. Georgia is a deep red state. It's a contested state, I should say, because of Fulton County, because it just so happens that's where the fraud happened in 2020. At 2 a.m., Fulton County discovered, we have another 40,000 people that just appeared out of nowhere. And so, this is a real issue, because that's a battleground state. And it's a state that's decided by about 10,000 votes. And you might think, okay, 12 people at one house, that's a problem. But it's not indicative of a problem significant enough to change the results of an election. You would be mistaken, because David says he's found about 1,000 of these residences. So 1,000, 12 times 1,000, that's 12,000. That's essentially more than what was the deciding factor in the 2020 presidential election. An entire presidential election could be determined by one county in Georgia. Just for a little bit of context here, that could be the thing that makes the difference. It could all come down to Georgia, Fulton County, and you could have these houses, 1,000 different residents with 12 people registered to vote. God forbid they send them out mail-out ballots. 12,000 people? Is that not a concern to anybody? You know, listen, as we talk about the fraud, it could be as much as like a couple $2 billion with the Somalians and the health insurance or the health daycare, situation. That's a big deal, and that's a monumental waste of our money. It's big enough that, you know, a lot of people are asking, like, why do I pay taxes? Should I continue paying taxes? Now, I cannot tell you to not pay taxes. They will put me in jail for a really long time, but it's a valid question. I understand why people would say, what the heck am I paying 30% of my income? That means it's like 100 days out of the year. Think about it that way. You get up 100 days out of the year, and for those days, you don't make $1. You don't get to keep $1 of that money. You're going to work 100 days of the year, and then all of the money that you made, you hand over to the federal government, or, you know, federal and state. You hand over about 30%, 40%, depending on your tax bracket. I could be really undercutting you here. 30, 40% of your income, you're handing over to the government. And then they're handing it to a bunch of Somalians who are running these fake daycares. They're not even real. That's infuriating. That is insane. But as horrible as that is, that kind of fraud is downstream of an even worse version of fraud. That sort of fraud, yes, it's significant. It's a big deal. Worse yet is electoral fraud, because you want to see this kind of stuff end. Okay, you have to get the bad apples out. You have to kick these people out of Congress. You have to kick them out of your state legislature. You have to kick them out of your state governor's mansion. It becomes exceptionally difficult to do that when you're dealing with electoral fraud. Now, thank God, and I think a piece of this may have been literally divine intervention. Thank God that we were able to we were able to make it too big to rig in the last presidential election. That's a very rare and very difficult thing to be able to accomplish. And so if we are going to get rid of the Somali fraud, you know what we have to do first? We have to get rid of the electoral fraud, which is why, again, not to beat a dead horse here, Republicans in Congress have to do something. They have to get, not just something. I don't want them to just do something. They're doing plenty of something. They're having plenty of donor parties and stuff like that. I don't want them to be chilling with lobbyists. That's not the something I'm asking for. The something that they need to be doing is they need to be ending the stupid filibuster and shoving through election integrity measures so fast that it would make your head spin. We need to be having a new election integrity measure like every week, or just one gigantic, big, beautiful bill that actually smashes through legislation that would ensure that we have a mandatory ID to vote. None of this insanity where we vote for a week. None of this insanity where it's like, oh yeah, you could just mail in no mail in. You have to go on election day. You have to show up. You have to prove who you are. You have to bring your freaking ID with you. If you have to bring your ID to buy a can of spray paint or a pocket knife or, basically anything, keyboard cleaner, if you have to bring it for that, you have to bring it to decide who the next president of the freaking United States is. If you think that fraud, this is the maximum capacity of fraud is a couple of Somalians who are cashing in big, if they're going to cheat the system for that, don't you think they would cheat the system to decide who's going to be the next most powerful man on planet Earth? Doesn't it seem there's a little bit more of an incentive structure there? Yeah, money is cool. Being able to get like $20,000 a month for a fake daycare, that's awesome. What's even more cool is to control the strings or the levers of power in the most military and economic superpower the world has ever seen. If they're doing it with daycares, they're doing it in our elections. We can't overlook that. End the filibuster and get this done. Anyways, that's all the time I have. Have a happy new year. Keep me in your prayers. Keep your country in your prayers. God bless.